So I said to Wade Henderson, after he'd had that meeting at the White House, after he had come out of that meeting at the White House and said he felt encouraged on voting rights, I said to him, it feels to me like all doors are closed. Why do you feel encouraged? What do you know that I don't know? What else can be done? This is what he said.
There was a real belief that we who are advocates for change have to take direct action if we are going to be effective in rolling back what we see happening at the state level, in the courts, and the failure of Congress, particularly the Republican Senate, to address these issues. We will be engaging in a summer of direct action in an effort to highlight the importance of this issue and what is needed to help turn it around. For example, next week, a group of Black African-American women will be leading a week of action in D.C. That they hope will help give voice to the concerns of African-American women and will help propel this issue to the front of people's agenda.
A summer of direct action. And of course, direct action doesn't mean force, doesn't mean violence by any means, but it does mean physical action. It means demonstrations. It means tactical, personal action. It means showing up in a way that is designed to move people, to wake up their conscience, to make them see their incentives to act or not act differently than they did before. Nonviolent, direct action, and civil disobedience. Today in Washington, D.C., the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, Joyce Beatty, and a group of about 20 civil rights activists, mostly black women, they marched through the streets in D.C. to the U.S. Capitol. This is Congresswoman Beatty in the front there in the blue blazer. Escorted by the Congresswoman, the group entered one of the Senate office buildings this afternoon. When they walked in the door, the Congresswoman took a second to really punctuate what they were doing there and what their intentions were.
Today we're sending a strong message. We have black leaders from across the country, black leaders who marched with John Lewis. This is not about one generation, it's about all generations.
Right.
Yes. And today we are represented by all generations.
Right.
And that's why today is important. Look at where we stand.
Yes.
We stand in the United States Senate. Places that we couldn't work, we couldn't even clean at one time. But today, black women say we are not waiting.
That's right.
Black women says that we're demanding our right to vote. And it starts today.
It starts today. Congresswoman Joyce Beatty of Ohio, chair of the Black Caucus. She and her group started marching through the lobby, the atrium of the Senate office building, singing songs. You might recognize on the right there in the Black Voters Matter T-shirt, Latasha Brown, who's been a guest on our show a number of times. Turns out she has amazing pipes, just a beautiful voice. Congresswoman Beatty was the first one arrested. As her hands were being put in zip ties, she started one more chant. She said, "Fight for justice." Congresswoman Beatty and 8 others arrested today at the Capitol. She released this statement this evening saying, "I stand in solidarity with black women and allies across the country in defense of our constitutional right to vote. We have come too far and fought too hard to see everything systematically dismantled and restricted by those who wish to silence us. Be assured, this is just the beginning." That was today, direct action in Washington, D.C. There's been a lot of talk, a lot of speechifying on voting rights, including that barn burner of a speech on voting rights from the president himself this week in Philadelphia. But unless some new path is opened, we are heading into a very near future where not only is voting made significantly harder for all the communities least likely to cast votes for Republican candidates, but we're headed into a next election soon in a whole new environment that we've never been in before. Where not only do we have those new voting restrictions, but Republicans, coast to coast, are primed and eager to believe that election results are not real and objectively knowable, and election results should not count unless they win. where the administration of elections is taken over by partisans from that party who think the same way, where partisans who think that same way are newly empowered to handle not only the counting, but disputes and rule changes and audits and recounts and certification or decertification of election results, especially ones that aren't to their liking. That is what we are heading into for the next election. Unless there's some kind of federal action to backstop voting rights and the nonpartisan administration of elections. This massive effort from the Trump wing of the Republican Party to corrupt and illegitimize the 2020 election result, you think that's a standalone effort? You think that only applies to 2020? In a moment, just a moment, we're going to speak with one of those Texas Democrats who met with conservative Democratic Senator Joe Manchin today. Fascinating, the confrontation between him being the man who is stopping progress on voting rights in America and the Texas Democrats who have left their homes and their jobs and come to Washington to beg for his help. He came out of that meeting with the Texas Democrats today saying it was a good meeting, an informative meeting. He said that they were all in complete agreement that action must be taken in Washington to protect voting rights. He then said that every senator, Democrat and Republican, should vote for voting rights protections. That's what he thinks should happen. So there shouldn't have to be a rule change or anything because it'll be 100-0 vote. Should be. So that's what he's hoping for, I guess. And hope is good. Hope is excellent. Hope is life-giving. But hope is not a strategy. As of right now, direct action is the last remaining strategy. Joining us now is Melanie Campbell. She's the president and CEO of the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation. She was one of the people who was arrested alongside Congresswoman Beatty today. I should add that all of the women arrested today in that protest will be meeting with Vice President Kamala Harris at the White House tomorrow on the issue of voting rights. Ms. Campbell, I'm sure this has been a long and intense day already. Thank you for staying up and being here with us tonight. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm always up watching you, so I'm good. Appreciate it.
Kind of you to say. I have to get you a Nielsen box quickly before this is over. Let me just ask you about this experience today. This was a dramatic thing at personal risk that you and your colleagues did today. How did you decide to do it, and how did it go?
Well, first of all, thank you again for the invitation to join you tonight. Actually, what sparked me and several others really to decide to organize around utilizing nonviolent civil disobedience direct action was really after the vote, when the Senate, the 10 senators would not even vote to debate voting rights. Not just the name of the bill, but just the notion that you won't even have a discussion. And so for us, that was like a line crossed to say that our voting rights can be shelved in this country, and that's not okay. And so we knew we had to continue to engage, as I was in the meeting with my civil rights colleagues last week with President Biden and Vice President Biden, but also we also knew we needed to really weigh in with the Senate. And so for us, we're going to continue a summer of activism, not just in Washington, D.C., but across this country. As you mentioned, my brother Wade Henderson, who will be doing some actions around Congressman John Lewis's 1-year anniversary of his passing. And so I'm a daughter of the South, Rachel. I come out of a place called Mims, Florida, where Harry and Harriet T. Moore's home was bombed. They were NAACP leaders their home was bombed. Why? Because they were registering black people to vote. So it's in my DNA, quite frankly. And I come out of Atlanta, where I spent a lot of years in the civil rights community. And so we know that direct action is one of the tools that we must use when we can't get our leaders to act. And so that's a part of our strategy. Not the only part of the strategy, but it is a part of the strategy.
I feel like Democrats in Washington have perfected the art of speaking on this issue, including, I think the president deserves credit for an impassioned speech that he gave earlier this week on it. They have not been able to translate that into action. And as you say, direct action, the kind of direct action that you and your colleagues engaged in today, is another part of the strategy to try to push it, to try to get through this impasse. I just have to ask, thinking about it tactically the way that you are, being willing to put yourself out there the way that you have, including today, looking ahead to those other elements of direct action that we're expecting over the summer, are you hopeful? Are you optimistic? Do you see a path?
Yes, I do. I believe the one thing about it, history is a great teacher. And sometimes you can look at something and you can say, and my sister, Reverend Dr. Bernice King, we were on a town hall this week as a part of our week of action, and it's always darkest before the dawn. And so if you believe in that, and we have faith in that, we were at the United Methodist building prior to going over to the Senate and spent a couple of hours with a speak out with leaders from Georgia who helped make sure that the turnout happened in Georgia. The Texas legislators came by, and we had several of our organizations from across the gamut come together in unity to make sure that we are clear that for us, voting rights is not it's not an option to say we will go back to the 1940s, Rachel, because at the end of the day, for African Americans in this country, we have always had to fight for our vote. We've always had to have federal intervention. And so for us to say, well, we don't have enough votes, what does that mean? We risk our lives in 2020 to turn out the vote in the middle of a pandemic. And so we expect for our leaders to lead. And so we're going to continue to put the pressure on those leaders and believe that at the end of the day, we will win. Now, will we win tomorrow? I am sure not, but we will continue to fight until we win.
Melanie Campbell is the convener of the Black Women's Roundtable, president and CEO of the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation, and was arrested today alongside the chair of the Black Caucus, protesting for voting rights in the Senate office building.